Hi, I'm just here at Hi. I'm here at Clayton Plaza, and if you can see in back here, there's lots of bamboo. There's bamboo flooring. It's one of these ecologically friendly malls here in Clayton where I live. So I also have my coffee here with me. This is going to be a very informal presentation, so hopefully you can bear with me. I do have one quick problem. As soon as I came to Panama, I was not permitted to log into the actual website of Canvas for some reason. And again, I think that this is the complication because my school has bought Canvas as its platform, and as a result, any outlier accounts, they just kind of eliminate. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to show you a little bit of my atlas map so that you can see where I'm getting the standards from. It was recently redone, but I think it is important for you to know where the standards are coming from and that it is aligned, since that is one of the criteria of the online course. So I'm just going to walk you through this a little bit, and hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm going to go down here to my faculty atlas access and see what I can bring up to show you. And I'm just going to show you that particular unit. This is a unit that was revamped for the curriculum design class, and it was also, let me get in here, and it was also one that was recently realigned as part of our review process. Okay, whatever. Remember my password. So I'm going to go in here to my English 10 and see what I can bring up. And basically what I did was this Genre Study 1 Poetry unit. One of the things we did with this review is we aligned it to IB because I have to teach pre-IB. So we tried to align it in terms of the assessments that we were going to use as well as the standards. So I see something is loading here. Not quite sure what. I guess my Alice map. There's a lot going on here. Alright, so we have some standards here up at the top that says these are Common Core standards that we're using, and it says to cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says. So part of that is what we do with the interactive oral assignments in IB. So this is also the major summative assignment that I chose to use for this unit and that I built into my Canvas. It says determine the meaning of words and phrases as they're used in the text. Analyze how an author's choices affect the interpretation of the text, the mood and feeling of the audience. And it also talks about comprehending poetry right here. Okay, so this is part of our goals. And also comprehension and collaboration. It says initiate and participate effectively in a range of collaborative discussions, which includes one-on-one, in groups, and teacher-led. So this is something that we definitely want to bring in, and certainly that's part of having the individual or the interactive oral conversations that we have. Okay, we also have some enduring understandings here, so I'm going to scroll down slightly, which is students will read and interpret poetry in light of literary elements such as symbolism, figurative language, imagery, rhythm, and structure. Students will develop a sensitivity to the connotative language. They'll contribute in an intellectual discussion. They'll read and interpret poetry independently. They'll be able to differentiate between characteristics of poetry and other genres of literature. They'll be able to provide concrete evidence to support their ideas. So writing is also a part of this. It also says here, how do the elements of poetry contribute to the message that the poet's communicating? How does choice of rhythm and structure affect meaning? And these essential questions are really what is going to be driving this poetry unit. So those essential questions. What makes poetry different? How can I validate my interpretation? What kinds of ideas and contributions should be shared in a collaborative analytical discussion? So they need to know the elements of poetry. They need to know the other genres and some of their elements for comparison. And they need to be able to do some interpretation independently and in groups. So this is part of what we have going on here. They're going to be writing some poems. They're going to be collaborating in intellectual discussions. They're going to have some close reading assignments, and an interactive oral assessment toward the end. So this is kind of where we're coming from. I'm going to close this out. Log out of that. And then what I want to try to do, if I can, is I want to bring up the next thing, which is my my Word document. So let me bring that up. I have another assignment that's also ongoing here, so let me just look here and try to find what I put together. Open. Hopefully I should see this Word document where I saved my assignments and my module list, because otherwise this could get difficult. So, assignments poetry unit. I see it right here. Okay. I'm actually going to scroll all the way down because I want to see the module first. So let me move this actually up here. Let me scroll down here. Okay, so I have this module I created, which is basically just a list of what's going to be happening. And what I have here is I started out with a little bit of an introduction, which is, what is poetry and why should I care? I mean, many of our students, honestly, in 10th grade, that's exactly how they feel about poetry. They're like, why should I even bother to care? And strangely enough, there's this article that talks about poetry and mental illness, and actually talks about how poets actually have more propensity for mental illness, and part of that is because of their ability to be creative and to think outside of the box and to think in innovative and unusual ways. And so on one hand, it's interesting because I'm sure no kids actually want mental illness, but on the other hand, it really shows the benefits of poetry, and that for people to create poetry, they need to be creative people. So that's one of the things about thinkers and inquirers and creativity that we want our students to have as part of the IB Learner Profile traits. And I also made, you already know this poetry movie here, which kind of introduces poetry and is like, you know what, part of poetry is just sitting down and doing it and trying, and not necessarily saying to yourself, oh, I can't do it. So I added that. A poetry genre reflection discussion. This kind of talks about what is poetry and what's the difference between poetry and other things. What are your thoughts about that? So it's kind of reflective writing, and it's also a way for them to kind of ponder what are really the differences between poetry and, let's say, short stories. The elements of poetry, and this is, I still need to make this video, but this video is to introduce the elements of what we call the Stop Bad Fit. And this worksheet was one that was passed down to me from the upper IB teachers, that talks about symbolism, theme, tone, all of those things. Figurative language, the things that they're going to need to know in terms of terms that are the broad umbrella terms for analyzing poetry. So what I wanted to do is do a video that introduces these elements, and it would be something that would be like the flipped classroom, something that they could watch at home, they could pause, they could rewatch if they forget before tests, and rather than use class time to lecture about this, I can then make a video about it and also include some glossary handouts and not waste time going over that when it is something that they could be doing on their own and also at their own pace. So this is the concept that I'm trying to work with here. So it's on. I'm going to be. There's also a brief YouTube video here that discusses elements. So I added that there as well. There's an article on poetry terminology, the Stop Bad Fit handout, the article about the basics of how to write poetry. So there's lots of content information here that's going to be included on Canvas. And certainly they're going to have access to that and be able to do some collaborative discussions about these articles a little bit. The Stop Bad Fit handout comes in over and over and over again. So that all kind of goes back into their interactive discussions as to what their expectations are. For the terms themselves, I included a poetry terms test so that they can just show me that they know the basic definitions of some of these terms. This isn't necessarily the biggest application type of test. I mean, it might have some elements of application in there, but it's more for me to just see, do they have a working definition of some of these terms going on? And they're going to be based on the Stop Bad Fit and also the poetry terminology link. So that's kind of where that's coming from. That's one assessment we're using. And then it says applying the elements in conversation and writing. So I have poetry writing. And what I did is I had them write a poetry, let's say on one particular theme, like love or war. And I had them write on that, and then what they're going to do is participate in class in collaborative discussions using a tuning protocol, like where two people can kind of discuss the poem and kind of give their thoughts without the other person interrupting. Then the other person can give reflective comments afterwards. It's just a way to kind of get rid of that. I realized as we were doing this with our own curriculum, it's a way of just getting rid of some of that defensiveness that students really have about their creative writing, and have them really look at the work for what it is, and get some advice from other students as to how to fine-tune it, rather than kind of have these peer review sessions that are unproductive. So the idea is for them to participate in collaborative poetry writing where they're workshopping it, basically. The second poem they're going to do out of inspiration, I believe. I think I might have said something about Billy Collins being an inspiration for poem 2, but basically they're doing 2 different poems that they can add to a portfolio. And the tuning protocol for poem writing is right down here. There's also a portfolio at the end where they're going to include that poetry information. And this portfolio, I mean, the idea and the concept of a portfolio is that later on, all your works that you write during the year should be put together. And then you can also fine-tune your portfolio. So this is kind of the concept that every writing that they do in class is going to be saved and kept here on Canvas, and it's going to be, we're going to be able to track how well they're doing throughout. So we have that there. Analytical paragraph writing. One of the things that I realize my students need to do is they need to write analytically about poetry, and this is something that's built into their Atlas maps. So when I talk about Oreo cookies, I talk about introducing the interpretation, and then I talk about giving the quote and that as the evidence, and then doing the follow-up. So they're going to do the same tuning protocol to talk about their paragraphs. They're going to use that particular format. There's a YouTube video that they can also watch of content as to how to do that, so they're going to have access to that. And finally, there's an interactive oral assessment. So there's a multimedia oral practice in which they use Go Animate, similar to what we did in class, which I thought was really fun, where they can actually create a conversation and show me what that's going to look like, but use an animator in order to do it. So I have that built in. And there's also some interactive oral practice here. And finally, the oral assessment, which is the major part of what they're doing. So I just wanted to show you that. I have in the Word document specific directions for the assignments, and I kind of just put them all in order as best as I could. So hopefully that will give you some idea as to what it was that I was doing. There's a rubric that's already posted on there. There's comments that can go back and forth in Canvas as part of feedback. So hopefully that's also something that will work well for you guys in terms of seeing what I've done here. There's also an inbox where the students can send me private messages if they need to. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening.